In today's episode, we learn about selflessness, courage, and feedback through the lens of the U.S. women's national soccer team. What's up, pop leaders? Welcome to another episode of the Popular Leadership Podcast, where we look at what pop culture can teach us about leadership. I'm your host, Tony R. Sanders. Super excited for you guys to be here today. We have another amazing episode. And the reason why this episode is going to be so amazing, because I can tell you, for me personally and other leaders that I talk to, energy is really, really important. And the guest that I have for you today has tremendous energy. I met her for the first time, actually via social media through Periscope, and her energy was contagious even through Periscope. This is one person I could go back and watch their replays, watch whatever they were talking about that day, and just completely be engaged by her energy, her message, and what she really, really cares about. So I want to introduce to you Bryn. Bryn is someone I met, I think, Bryn, in 2015 or 14. It's been 4 or 5 years or so since I met Bryn. We met again through Periscope, but then I actually saw her at Periscope Summit. And I always thought Bryn was dope just from watching her live streams. But I can tell you the moment where I knew for sure she was dope. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning or something. And I was walking in the hotel lobby at Periscope Summit. I have no idea what I was doing. But I look across the lobby all the way on the other side, and Bryn is there, like, meditating, relaxed, so zen. And I'm like, Bryn, that's my people. That's my people right there. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Bryn, what's up, Bryn? How are you?
Hey, Tony, I'm so happy to be here. I am great. And I'm glad that you mentioned my energy, because it is probably the number one signature besides the hair. And yeah, like, in fact, I named my LLC Brynergy Productions, like Brynergy.
I like that.
Brynergize, because it is really something that I am known for and tend to carry with me everywhere I go.
I liked it a lot. Do you remember the meditation story?
Did I fool you with that? I was like, oh yeah, I do remember you telling me that. I totally remember the meditation. Yes. So yes,
that's so funny.
Kind of fallen off as far as my consistency, but I still do meditate on a semi-regular basis. So yes.
That's really cool. So, Bryn, I always think that when I go to podcasts, when I listen to podcasts, sometimes the host, they don't do the greatest of jobs introducing their guests. And so I had the bright idea, the light bulb came on. I said, you know what? Why don't I let the guests just introduce themselves? So, Bryn, tell the people who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Bryn Drescher. I really hate titles. I'm just going to be honest. I think they're all made up anyway. So I can tell you a little bit of what I focus on, because I'm a speaker, a coach, and, like the areas that I'm most passionate about is motivation, mindset, personal development, and then, of course, manifesting. I'm really into the law of attraction. And so one of the things that I do I'm currently very passionate about 2 particular areas, which is women's empowerment, and then that of, bringing more awareness to diversity in all of its forms, not just on the basis of race, but class, sexuality, you name it. It's something that I'm passionate about. So right now, what do? Well, I help people make their vision boards a reality, and also do mental conditioning coaching for a basketball team. So I'm really into sports. Sports is something that I think is a great way that our mindsets really get exposed. I mean, we can all think of a time that a team sort of lost the mentality and started losing the game. So,
yeah, I was just thinking about this earlier today. So I learned so many life lessons just playing sports growing up. Like, I learned to understand where your strengths are. I went to a school that 6 of the 12 people or so that were on our basketball team went to the NBA. So it let me know really early, that wasn't gonna be me. Like that just wasn't my destiny. I learned, okay, like Tony, you're gonna be good at some things, you're gonna do a lot, you're gonna be successful. Going to the NBA may not be one of them, but that allowed me to focus on the things that I was good at. Even, overcoming losses, right? Trying to bounce back from a loss or taking an L and figuring out, how do I recover? How do I retain my self esteem, even though the results don't look good right now. Even when I think about grit, how do you teach a kid grit and intuitive, like just sticking to it, and even teamwork without playing sports? So I could talk about that all day. I don't want to make the podcast about that, but I love that you brought that up. And mental conditioning is something that's so very important, undervalued, and underused. So thank you for doing that work. I appreciate that.
Whether they're an athlete or an executive or
Yeah.
about leadership, I mean, of course, it's only really served people, when they go into sport, but mental conditioning is needed everywhere. So,
Yeah, I agree with that 1000%. I love that so much. So, of course, this is the podcast where we look at what pop culture can teach us about leadership. And so, Bryn, I want to know from you, what have you brought to the table to us today? What and who are we going to be studying and learning leadership principles from today?
okay. So today, our leadership teachers and examples is going to be the U.S. women's national team, who recently won their second consecutive World Cup. For those that aren't soccer fans, that doesn't sound like a big deal, but only one other women's team has done it, and that's Germany. And I believe there's only one other, or maybe two other men's teams that have ever done it in the history of the World Cup soccer. So it's a big deal that they recently won their second World Cup. We're not
Yeah.
necessarily talk about that, although that's amazing. We're really talking more about how they're using this elevated platform through their excellence to affect change on a global scale.
I love that so much because one, I'm the guy that doesn't know anything about soccer. I only know one football, and it doesn't have a U in it. It has two O's in it. It's American football, and so I love that we're going to talk about that. I love that we're going to talk about the women's national team because I do think that what they're doing is incredible, and I haven't even watched the match. But one thing that I want to really dig into, then I want you to dig into more of what you said is utilizing your platform for a message. I think that a lot of people, and you can tell me if you agree with this or not, a lot of people can't separate what they do and who they are, right? Sometimes you get caught up in your role and you're not focused on your purpose. You're not focused on the greater good that you can do in the world. You just get caught up in your role. And I have to say that I see that happening with women far too much, right? I think about my wife, Michelle. It's very easy for her to lose Michelle and her purpose because she's so busy being Tony's wife and the kid's mom and all the roles and the things that she does. So I love that we're going to talk about how this women's soccer team is not only delivering excellence in their sport and their role, but also serving a larger purpose than just what they do very well from a soccer perspective. I love that a lot.
You hit the nail on the head right there with the multi-dimensionality, or I'm probably pronouncing that right, but dimensionality, individuals. And so this idea of identity versus role. The first time I was introduced to that, it was by a guy named Matthew, and I'm forgetting his last name. He's an entrepreneur, but he was talking about identity versus role. And I use it a lot with my athletes, but it's like you as a person are plugging yourself into the role as an athlete in this sport, but it does not define who you are. And the same thing happens with women, particularly when they're mothers or wives. Sometimes they forget who they are. So you bringing up
Right.
perfect. So with the U.S. women's soccer team, to sort of bring it full circle, is they're saying we're more than just athletes, and this is more than just an issue about soccer. This is about women as a whole being equal and seen as equal on the stages of sport. And we know that women are fighting for they're particularly centered around equal pay in their sport, and we'll talk more about that. But they are saying, we already know women in general are paid less than men. And so we can talk about why that is, but in the sense of leadership, it's like they're taking this big stab at it. And I've got some great quotes from two of the star players, but one of them kind of said, we may not reap the benefits of this. And that's the other thing about leadership, being able to put yourself out there, knowing that it may not happen in your tenure, in your sport, your job, your company, or your lifetime. But are you willing to, step out and kind of, speak to something that does need to be addressed and changed, even if it's not necessarily going to benefit you in the long run?
That's so crazy that you said that, and I love that. I love the idea of a leader that says, "I'm going to do the right thing even if I don't benefit from it." I think true leaders are selfless. And I think a lot of times we don't have enough selfless leaders. Everyone's trying to figure out, the with them, right? What's in it for me? I'm only going to do it if it benefits me. I love the idea of a leader saying, "You know what? I'm going to step up. I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to be the first one through. I'm going to be the one yelling this, even if it is to my own detriment in some cases, right? But even if I don't get to see the full play run out, I know that I did my part in moving the business forward, moving my industry forward, or moving the cause forward." So I'm excited, Brent. I'm going to let you take it away. I could talk all day, but let us know what we need to know about the women's soccer team.
So the U.S. women's national team currently is fighting for equal pay in their sport. The men's team gets paid more, but it's a little bit more complicated than just apples to apples or, whatever. So the women's national team, at first it's like, oh, the men get paid more. Currently, the women's national team, under the old collective bargaining agreement, the women did not collect a salary, nor did the men. But the men collect $17,000 per win. The women collect $1,300, okay, per win as a bonus, okay?
Oh, wow.
And now, yeah, so if you talk about if the men won a lot, now this is US US soccer. This has nothing to do with FIFA, which is the World Soccer Federation, sort of. So we're going to take it away from that. They're fighting for equal pay in their sport here in the United States. There's all these other arguments about, what the men's World Cup and the women's World Cup and all that, and we can talk about that. But this is more about US soccer. So right now, the U.S. men's team gets $17,000. It's some change. It's not $17,000 even, but for the sake of this, we're just going to round it up. But the women get about $1,300 per win. If they lose, okay, the men's team gets $5,000 to go home with to, pad their sorrows. The women currently get $0 if they lose. Okay.
Wow.
Under the new collective bargaining agreement, the women get $100,000 base salary. The men still get nothing. So if both teams lose every game, they're equal. Okay. But the women are winning. And they're winning not just barely, they're dominating their sport in the world. So, but they're, grossly being underpaid comparatively. So I think the disparity was originally about 60 to 30, it was somewhere big, like 60%. Now it's 89%. The women get paid 89% of the men. But it's not just about dollars and cents when you look at the pay scale. It's more about the investment in the sport, the sponsors, the fact they didn't have a TV deal, and all that. Now, the thing that I want to talk about is sort of like, yes, look at the U.S. women's national team. And basically, they're trying to move the conversation forward. So here they've won back-to-back World Cup champions. So they're saying, look, we've proved to be excellent in our sport. We've proved to outpace the numbers broadcast-wise of people watching our sport on the world stage, not necessarily here in the United States, because we know soccer is not quite given the respect of American football, baseball, and basketball.
Right.
And when we're talking women and men, we're definitely talking more on the NBA side than the WNBA and so on. And
sure.
So we're looking at this thing of saying, to me, it's a chicken and egg argument, right? Like, yes, women's sports are younger than men because, of course, there was years women couldn't have, teams and such.
Right.
There hasn't been much investment in the women's teams. And they're saying, like, even though we win the World Cup, they don't put us up as nice as hotels. They don't give us as nice of facilities. They don't put as much money into our staff. Like, it's different on all the levels. It's not just what you pay us, it's how you treat us. And even though we're world champions, being the best, the whole thing about women having to work harder than men to get paid less, right? But literally being the best has not afforded them much more in the terms of respect from the federations and FIFA and so on and so forth.
I
So
want to jump in really quick, Brent. I want to jump in really quick because I love something you said, and I don't want us to just move right past it. I love that you said it's not just about how much you pay us; it's also about how you treat us. I think that sometimes, whether it's this corporation, whether it's soccer, whether it's sports, whether it's business, a lot of leaders think that they can just throw money at a problem and that's going to make it better. Like, yeah, we're just going to pay them more. We're just going to throw money at them. Let's run a contest. Let's give them incentives. And no, it's not all about the money. Not everyone is money motivated. Some people just want a leader that's going to treat them fairly, especially if you're in the office, then you're a minority in that office, being, a person of color or a female. And God bless you if you're both. Right. It's not about the money per se, right? We do want fair pay. We do want equal pay, but we also want it to be treated and viewed as equal, right? Not better or different, but just viewed as equal. So I want you to keep going, but I had to highlight that point because I thought that was amazing.
thank you for drawing that parallel because that's the whole point, right? It's about equal respect, right? And so, there's all these arguments, women's sports isn't as exciting and so on and so forth. But it's like, if for years and years and years, and I know this may be too much of a primitive argument, but to go back to Jackie Robinson in baseball, right? Like literally no one was asking for a black athlete in baseball. So we can't, but for years and years, the sport was just, all white. And then they brought in Jackie Robinson, finally allowed him to play. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, he's really great. And he makes baseball exciting. And oh my gosh. And so I think it's a little bit of finally seeing that it's not just that, oh, always in tech, it's been men. So why would we think women could do as good of a job or whatever? It's just you have to be willing to look at things differently. Where are you investing? It's sort of like when you talk about leadership and we're talking about like looking for your pool of talent and making certain requirements like a college degree, such can be borrowing from the field and not really thinking about the fact that people, and there are jobs that are changing. Things are changing in even our hiring practices because they realize that they're exclusionary in scope. And it's the same, which what the U.S. women's national team is talking about. You're saying we're not as good as the men, we're not as exciting as the men. But for years and years and years, sport has been defined by men. So of course, anything different is going to be, talk about it's pure economics. I'm like, but it's not pure economics because we're talking about really having to be a trailblazer and be willing to stick your neck out and invest in a Microsoft when it's in a garage versus when it's already a $1 trillion corporation.
That's something that I've never thought about before when it comes to sports. Like men, when it comes to competitive professional sports, have a tremendous advantage, not just like physically, but we just had a head start. Even if you look at like my favorite sport, which is basketball, if you look at it in the 60s when Bill Russell was playing, and you look at it today when you have the Zion Williamsons of the world and LeBron James of the world and, those type of physical specimens, the game has had the opportunity at a competitive professional level to evolve so much longer. So even our bodies and the way that we train and the resources that we have at our disposal as men in sports have been able to evolve with us and make us stronger and make us faster, which also adds to a little bit of the entertainment value of the sport. And so I could definitely see from a woman's perspective, who, yes, the sport hasn't been around as long, but that also lets you know that they don't have as many resources. They haven't had the same amount of time to evolve. And, it reminds me, especially when you brought up the college degree thing, it's like, well, you don't have a college degree and he does, so that's the end of that story. Well, it's not that simple. There may be a reason why this minority person didn't have the same opportunity to get there. And so you have to even look at your hiring practices as a leader and ask yourself, do I have blinders on? Am I only going into talent pools where I could only pull out a certain amount of certain type of person, at least on paper, right? Not that they couldn't draw more, they couldn't perform better, or they couldn't draw a national audience, right? Like the women's soccer team, a global audience. It's not that, but I'm not even looking in that direction to give them a shot. So I never even thought about that perspective. And thank you so much for sharing that. I love that.
So yeah, it's really important as a leader that you're willing to step out of, like you said, your identity or your role as just a soccer player and or as an employee sometimes and as a boss to really look at the scope of what's going on here. And like obviously there's been so many instances throughout history where people will look the other way and like put it in the 99 women, the US 1999 women's national team won the World Cup as well. And it's been since, in 2015, we won again. So it was 99 and then 2015. But looking at that, they said that they would not have, because the women actually levied a lawsuit. If you're not aware, they levied a lawsuit against US Soccer Federation before the World Cup, like as they're, representing US as the team. Of several of the teammates got together and said, this is not right. We need to be paid the same. So they levied a lawsuit, even though they were going to represent the United States in the World Cup tournament. So that takes courage to really, as an employee, as knowing someone that, like, wow, I'm going to sue my employers as they're employing me, paying my paycheck, making my dream come true, or providing the very space for me to do
Yeah.
that. So we want to talk, there's definitely bravery and courage in leadership. That's really important.
Yeah, that is super important. Wow, I'm trying to imagine in my head going to work every day, knowing that I have a lawsuit against my employer. But I do love, and I actually just had a conversation right before we started recording with a leader, just about being open and honest and candid with the people that you work with and the people that even you report up to. That's some of the toughest conversations to talk to, the leadership team of your organization or the C-suite or the people that you report up through when things aren't right, when the news isn't necessarily good news. And so I think that one of the great leadership principles that you have to have, if you really want to impact change, if you really want to be someone that is living a purpose and not just playing a role, you have to have courage. You have to be able to stand up in the face of injustice and say, no, this isn't right. And I'm not going to go away quietly. I'm not going to just sit there and act like everything is okay when things are clearly not okay. And so that's another good gem from the women's soccer team. What else can we learn, Bryn?
And so, in the U.S. Soccer Federation, just to not paint them badly, they do put more money into women's soccer probably than most world federations. I mean, definitely one of the reasons the U.S. women's team game is not probably as favored across the globe is that most federations get their money are allotted to both basically to the entire country, and they put probably a bulk of that share into men's soccer. They don't award it individually for men versus women. So our team definitely has better treatment than probably most. And I mean, if you watch the World Cup, which I know you said you didn't, but people that don't, the European teams do the best, and then the United States. So literally, we're not seeing any African countries really excelling, even Latin American countries, which historically have been stellar in the men's game. The women's teams are not up to the same level because they're not being as supported. So the other thing is looking for feedback. So right now, the U.S. Soccer Federation, despite the fact that they are being sued, are going into mediation and willing to sit down and have a conversation. And so, a lot of times I think bosses don't, and anybody, even in education, and which, there's not a lot of conversation between policymaker and person who executes policy or has to carry out or deal with policy, live by it. And so I think I want to commend leaders who actually do ask for feedback.
Yeah, I love that. Any solid relationship, whether it's business, whether it's sports, whether it's marriage, any solid relationship is built on trust and giving feedback. If I can't give you feedback, if I can't let you know when things are going well or when things aren't going well, then we're not going to have a sustainable relationship. And what I found in leadership, there's normally three types of feedback you can give, right? You can give positive feedback, which I think is super important and shouldn't go unnoticed. You can also give negative feedback, letting people know when things aren't going the way that they should go, right? And when there's room for improvement. But then the third and most popular form of feedback is no feedback at all, because it's just easier, right? I don't want to tell you that you're failing. The leader doesn't want to hear that they're failing. They don't want to hear any more bad news. They don't want to hear that things aren't going well or the way that they should. And so no one says anything, and everything continually gets worse and worse and worse. So I'm with you, Brent. Salute to all of those leaders who have the courage to step up and say, you know what, this isn't right. I'm going to say something. I'm going to give feedback, even if it goes against me, even if it hurts me today. I know in the long run, I'll be happy that I gave that feedback, and salute to the leaders that are actively seeking feedback as well.
Absolutely. And there's two quotes that I want to share. But before we get to that, I want to say that it's really important to also know that change takes time. So the thing that they are aware of and not disillusioned by, and I think a lot of employees or leaders or, on either side, whether they be boss or employee, obviously we know leadership is exercised by all people at all levels. It's not about who's in power. Leadership and power are two different things. And so in that, they are aware that it's not like, oh, tomorrow women are going to be paid the same. They're talking
Right.
about moving the conversation forward. And there's so many people. And right now we've seen, even in politics, so much pull to keep things as the status quo. And
Yeah.
they're just saying, look, there needs to be a conversation. We've done everything we could possibly do to show the merit of, our argument. And yet people are still like, men's sports are better. That's their argument. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
But you're not really talking about any social movement. There was no real argument for it. It was more about doing the right thing. So it's not, because when we reduce things down to dollars and cents, you take the humanity out of anything. And so it's more about let's look at what it's going to take. And it's going to take a lot of things. It's not just going to take the U.S. Soccer Federation saying, okay, we'll pay you the same, because, at the end of the day, it's the fans, it's the teams, it's the management, it's the coaching federations, it's everybody kind of getting up to speed about what's important. And part of that is visibility and awareness. That's a huge kind of social movement. So
It's so funny. The majority of the people that are making those comments about the women's sports just not being as good or as fun as the men's sports don't even watch. You know what I mean? Like they're just saying it. They don't even watch. I love to watch our WNBA team here in Indiana, the Fever. When my sister was younger, she had a relationship with Tamika Catchings, and she would invite us to games. And so when I was a kid in middle school and high school, we would go to Fever games. And I'm like, these women are good. Even I had a chance to play against some great female basketball players. And I'm like, you know what? These women are good. No, they're not probably going to dunk on me, but am I going to be able to guard them? No, probably not either. So these women are good. I think it's so funny that people are judging and they're not even giving the product a chance. And so I just think that's silly.
Two stand out. The United States women's national team does they've come up with a new structure where they have a 3-captain rotation. Depending on who's in the field, where's the armband. So they don't necessarily do one person as the spokesperson for their team or as the captain. It's whoever. They spoke a lot about whoever could be relied on in the moment. But there's 3 captains, Carly Lloyd, Megan Rapinoe, and Alex Morgan. The 2 most outspoken and part of the lawsuit are Megan Rapinoe and Alex Morgan. And I wanted to give some quotes I want to start with Megan Rapinoe. She's been the most outspoken because she recently said she was not going to the White House if she won. And so she's kind of been pinned as the activist of the team, so to speak.
Gotcha.
But she gave a speech just the other day. They had a parade for them. I mean, literally, they won. They flew back to New York. They had a parade for them, and then they were on the ESPYs last night in Los Angeles. So if they've slept, I'd be amazed. But nonetheless, she said, "We have to be better. We have to love more, hate less. We got to listen more, talk less." She said, we got to know this is everyone's responsibility. Every single person here. It's our responsibility to make this world a better place. Do what you can. How do you make your community better? How do you make the people around you better? We have to collaborate. It takes everybody. She says, do what you can, do what you have to do, step outside yourself, be more, be better, be bigger than you ever have before. So that was just a speech.
I love that.
Impromptu, like literally they just got off a bus from the parade and she said that, like that wasn't a politician, that was literally an athlete, a female athlete having this conversation, but it was beautiful because it was like, we know this is everyone's responsibility. This isn't just the U.S. Soccer Federation. This isn't ours. But we're not just talking about women in soccer. We're talking about on the global scale, how many women are behind equal pay? I think pretty much everybody. And so let's collectively do what we can to affect change, not just in the area of equality of pay, but treatment, respect, and all of that. So.
I love that. I love that quote. And it is everyone's responsibility. I think about that when it comes to injustice, right? So an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So I think about that when injustice. I also think about that when it's leadership, right? When we talk about just accountability, like not everyone can do everything, but everyone can do something. And it's super important for us to step up and do whatever it is we can, whether it's leveraging our own platforms to be able to help get the message out there, or maybe there's some boots on the ground stuff that we can do, but everybody should have a part in moving the conversation forward. And I love that. I know you have another quote for us. I want to hear it.
So one other thing is, and I mean, just to sort of bookend what you just said, it's a good manager, leader is a facilitator, not a micromanager. So it's about facilitating change, not necessarily having to be the bottleneck of it. So I think that's important as well, sort of kicking something off, starting conversations. People are now talking about it. What can we do? So really making that call and that charge. So Alex Morgan was asked on ESPN questions about, this equal pay movement. And she said, we're trying to raise more opportunities for girls and women around the world to be able to be included and respected in this sport. We're not, and this is where she was saying what I alluded to earlier, we're not always going to reap the benefits, of what we are, sort of speaking out about. And that's being willing, like the Martin Luther Kings, the Rosa Parks, all that, not necessarily being able to see the being able to have the vision, but not necessarily being able to witness it with your own eyes, or before I retire from that sport, being able to reap the benefits, like she said. So.
Right. Man, I love that so much. Bryn, I could talk to you for hours and days on end. I think you know that. But you've shared so much with us today. Let the people know where they can find you online and what you're up to these days that they can be a part of.
Yeah, so you can find me at brindrescher.com. I do online workshops every month for women's empowerment, women's manifesting. They're only for women right now, not to leave out men, but I know. I'm not discriminating. I'm just, I will say this. We're not trying to we're not trying to exclude anyone from the table. As one of my mentors, Jen Kem, said, we're trying to build longer tables with more seats for everyone.
I love that. I love that.
And sometimes women need a container and a place to be able to create and sort of level the playing field, so to speak.
100%.
So you can go to brindrescher.com /events, and you can find out more about that. If you live in the Los Angeles area, I do them live in person on a monthly basis, but you can also go to an online one and they're just as powerful. So that's where you can find me. And of course, I'm on all social platforms by my first and last name, which I know Tony will have in the show notes, but it's just Bryn Drescher, at Bryn Drescher on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of that. So.
Well, I love that. Bryn, thank you so much for joining us. I love having you as a guest. We should probably do this again sometime in the future. Let's stay connected. And listen, guys, the moral of the story is this. Leadership is everywhere. You just have to keep your heart open, your mind focused, your eyes peeled, and watch for the pop. I'll see you guys next time on the Pop Your Leadership Podcast.